Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There, a weekly video stream and podcast currently focused on Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, which is available to watch on Paramount Plus. My name's Keith Isles, and as ever on this stream, I am joined by
Pete Mealy.
And we are both film and television enthusiasts. And in today's episode, we're going to have a spoiler-filled discussion around episode 9 of season 2, which is the penultimate episode entitled Subspace Rhapsody. So, Pete, I'm going to go right off from the start here and say that I feel like we've got a lot to discuss in this episode, simply because I've got a lot of thoughts and feelings on this, both as a lifelong fan of all things Star Trek, but also as a frustrated, creative, actor, filmmaker type person as well. So, I just wanted to get that out there. I feel that we might have quite a bit to discuss. What do you think?
Well, if emotions are running high,
nice. Okay.
What might happen?
There you go. Yeah. Well, if you are new to the channel, welcome. Please do, if you enjoy any of this content, please do consider giving us a like on this video or a review if you're listening to the podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified as and when new content drops. We don't just talk about Star Trek on this channel. We talk about many film and television properties, all sorts of genres from the history of film and television. So there's many things on here. We also talk about other aspects of the industry, such as the technology. We talk about physical media, as the name of the channel suggests, etc. So please do check all of that out. We've got a little bit of a format. If you're new to us, we do spoil the episodes up to and including this one. We also talk a little bit about the behind the scenes involved in this. Then we have a bit of fun. We look at Easter eggs and references and connections to other bits of Star Trek, etc. Delve into a little bit of speculation, but then we really get into our thoughts and individual thoughts and any nitpicks, etc. on the episode. So that's kind of where we're going to take you over the next, well, I don't know how long. I was going to say over the next hour, but who knows with this one. But without further ado, Pete, what should I say? Without further ado, Pete, hit it.
The Enterprise finds a subspace rift, thinking it will speed up communication. They run some tests, and it makes everyone sing. They sing about how weird it is. They sing about their interpersonal problems, feelings, whatever. And then the Klingons catch the singing and want to kill everyone for making them sing. And then nothing the Enterprise does fixes the problem until they decide that everyone singing will fix the problem. So they all sing, and it does fix the problem. Side notes: Nurse Chapel is going to go work for Dr. Corby. Pike and his girlfriend have relationship issues. La'an tells Kirk she likes him, and Kirk knows that Carol Marcus is pregnant. The aristocrats.
Oh, love it, Pete. Oh, it's the most entertaining part of my week is when you do this. Which doesn't say a lot for my week, right? No, I'm kidding. Right, okay, let's have a quick look at the production credits with this week's Make It So. Alrighty, so this week's episode was the writing credits go to Dana Morgan and Bill Wolkoff. as writers, both of which we have talked about on previous episodes this season because they have already contributed. But first time directing Star Trek here, we have director Dermot Downes. So Dermot, he's a film director, but also a cinematographer. He's got quite a resume of cinematography credits as well. But directing wise, his directing goes back to I was going to say the late 90s. Am I right? No, the 2008, so 2006, sorry, was his first credit here as a TV director on the TV series Justice. He's also done Close to Home, 11th Hour, The Forgotten, Dark Blue, Chase, Nikita, Common Law, Criminal Minds, The Tomorrow People, Gotham, The Originals, iZombie, CSI Cyber, Arrow, The Flash, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Deception, Supergirl, Batwoman, Blind Spot, Prodigal Son, Doom Patrol, Chucky, Fire Country, and this is his first directorial episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So as you can see from there, a huge filmography in terms of TV series, and contributed to quite a bit in the what's known as the DC Arrowverse as well. So quite a lot of credits there for Dermot. As I said, writers we've already mentioned, so I won't spend any more time on that now. So that's this week's production credits. So, time for a drink, Pete.
Yeah.
You call it today. I'm always calling it.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Alrighty, so just a bit of fun. This is where we look at the Easter eggs, references, connections, all of that sort of stuff. So, Pete, as always, did you see anything before I bring slides up?
I saw quite a bit this week, actually. For me, I think. Anyway. So first up, Dr. Corby is who Nurse Chapel's going to work with, and we know him from the original series. Is he the one who puts his body into a robot?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yep.
Okay. We do get a
What Admiral Little Girls Are Made Of, I think is the name of the episode. What Little Girls Are Made Of, I believe, in the original.
In my head, I had Dr. Corby wants to be a robot, like that sort of phrase. Anyway, Admiral April gets a shout out, right? And so we've seen him, but now we get a shout out for them. In terms of characters, Carol Marcus is mentioned, and that is the mother of Kirk's son in Star Trek 2.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah.
You are correct. Yeah.
I was like, no. She was before Rathacon, wasn't she? But no, she wouldn't have been in the motion picture. So it had to be Rathacon. Yeah. Okay. So, and Kirk knows that she's pregnant, which is, I think, strange, right? But sorry. Okay. And then the last thing that I noticed, which is possibly a little weird, is that the earrings Uhura is wearing in this episode, I think match some of the ones she used to wear in the original series, right? So I noticed those and was like, oh, it's the first time I've noticed her earrings. So not sure what that says exactly about me or about this episode, but it was the first time I noticed the earrings and thought, oh, those look familiar. Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, you got most of it from my point of view.
Carol Marcus was in Star Trek Into Darkness too, wasn't she?
Oh yeah, yes. Right. So just looking at the slides there. So the Roger Corby thing, I've just looked it up actually, and it was What Little Girls Are Made Of is the season 1 episode. But you're right, he does indeed put his consciousness or something into a robot or something in that episode. But yeah, there he is in the original series, along with Majel Barrett, who was playing Christine Chapel. So this is kind of the future for Christine Chapel. Obviously she's going to go off for 3 months, I guess, between seasons to do this, but along the way at some point we'll obviously fall in love with and get engaged to this character. So yeah, it really does sort of mark the end for Spock, as it were. The Carol Marcus thing, which I got there at the bottom left, you're absolutely right. Carol Marcus was first seen in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and was also seen in a different timeline in Star Trek Into Darkness, played by Alice Eve in that. So yeah, timeline wise, this does actually all make sense, because that would make David Marcus, who their son, around 25 by the time of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So that does sort of tally up, and is obviously quite a nice connection to that. So so that makes sense.
Sorry, I know we probably should save this for later, but wasn't Kirk surprised that he had a son?
No, his first line to Carol, I mean, he says, "Is that David?" And then when they're alone, he says, "I did what you asked. I stayed away." And she says about, "Were we going to be together? You had your career and all of this," which kind of lines up, because we see Kirk, is obviously going up through the ranks and stuff in this. So yeah. Anyway, we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Another little reference. Obviously, they mention, Gilbert and Sullivan, and we have had singing already in one of the short Star Treks called Q&A, which was actually Spock's first day as an ensign on the Enterprise, and he's obviously welcomed aboard by Una, or Number One, as she was only known then, and they in a turbo lift, and this comes up about Gilbert and Sullivan, and they end up singing and crazy stuff. So they sort of experimented with this a little bit on one of the shorts, I guess. So there was that. What other things? Oh yeah, now this I did not spot until I looked at IMDb to look at the directing and writing credits for this week, and I didn't spot this at all. But Bruce Horak, who obviously played Hemner, one of our favorite characters that's no longer, actually played the Klingon commander in this episode. So I've got a picture there of the Klingon commander, and also Bruce Hemner outside of, Bruce Horak outside of the Hemmer makeup and Klingon makeup. So so it was good that they, in tradition of Star Trek, they bring actors they've worked with before back to play, different aliens and stuff in the show. So so that was good. Was there anything else that I remember? Oh, and then the other thing, which I'm sure we'll get into again, but obviously they do play the original Star Trek theme at the end of all this, but literally in universe, which is again a bit problematic. But I don't know whether you noticed that at the end they played the Alexandra Courage theme from the 60s TV show. So that's kind of an Easter egg as well, I guess. But one we can certainly delve into. But that was about all I spotted, most of which you'd already mentioned. So yeah, those are this week's Easter eggs. Are you seeing any lights yet, Pete?
Yeah. There are 4 lights.
And I've kind of got that was the picture of Kirk there was kind of my expression and through this entire thing. After this week, I've got nothing really in terms of speculation. I don't know. The only thing I will say in terms of speculation is we get the first name of I've forgotten the cat. I know it's Maria. Is it Patel? Is it Captain Patel?
Yeah, Patel.
Yeah, we get her first name is Maria on this. Obviously, this being Pike's colleague and as a captain, and also a love interest throughout this show so far. Obviously, that develops more on this, but at the end there, she's been called off to a special assignment or something. I've got a bad feeling because we kind of know Pike's future. I've got a kind of a bad feeling that Captain Maria Patel is not long for this world or this strange new world.
Okay.
I don't know. That's the only speculation I'd say is I got a bad feeling about that, really. But
that's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
From you?
No.
Nothing. No?
Nothing.
You've got the have you got the Shatner Kirk pose as well? Yeah. Of course, people listening on the podcast will wonder what the hell we're talking about here, won't they?
It's worth going to see the stream for that image. But yeah, I just I checked out a little bit. Yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, we can probably the formal part of our show we can probably draw a line under then, right?
Yeah.
Where?
You do it better than me.
The line must be drawn here. At least we're not attempting to sing things.
Yeah.
So this is where we really sort of delve into our thoughts, feelings, nitpicks, etc. One question I want to kick off with before we really get into this, Pete, is I know you are a big fan of movies and television, obviously, as well as Star Trek. But broadly, where do you stand with musicals, first of all?
So I was a theater kid in high school and college, which means that I have done a lot of musicals and been a part of a lot of musicals. And while I'm not the biggest sort of Broadway West End type of guy, right? I mean, when I lived in London for 6 months, I probably went to the theater, once or twice a week. And I didn't see a lot of musicals then and I live in New York now, and I'll be honest, I don't go see musicals, right? I go see straight plays for the most part. And that's because I kind of prefer them, right? Now that doesn't mean that I don't occasionally hum some Les Mis, right? Or several years ago, Hamilton was my number one listened to album on Spotify.
Yeah.
And some of those songs are still in rotation, right? For me. And the Green Day musical was really good, and I have that album. So I think that I can appreciate the art form, but it's not my go-to. Right. I think if we're sort of ranking, right, like horror is at the bottom and maybe musicals are like one step up. And then we get into all the other stuff that I really like, right? But so yeah, it's a little bit above horror for me, but it's
okay. Above horror.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So a horror musical must be your worst nightmare then.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I did go see Reanimator the musical because a guy I know was the star of it.
Right.
And it was a very, very good show. Although I was seated in the splash zone,
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Okay.
I got covered with fake blood. Um, I recommend if anyone gets a chance to see Reanimator the musical. It's very good.
That
Uh,
sounds intriguing. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and Jeffrey Coombs approved.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Of course. Yeah.
anyway,
Star Trek
so
connection right there. So there you
Star
go.
Trek connection right there. Yeah, one of my absolute favorite Star Trek actors.
Yeah. Well, the
Uh,
one who's been in, is it every iteration so far?
no, because he
He's not
wasn't
been in
in
Strange New
TOS.
Worlds, has he? No. And he obviously wasn't in the original. Yes. Yes. Sorry. The
Um, but he's got the record for most different characters in one episode, and yeah. Anyway, uh,
um
so musical is to get back on track. I apologize. Musical, I appreciate the art form. It's not one of my go-tos,
right.
right?
Yeah.
But I do have musicals that I really really enjoy.
Yep. Okay. I mean, I think we're in obviously not on the horror thing for sure, but we're in a
Yes.
similar space with regards to musicals because I'm kind of, yeah, I struggle a little bit with musicals in film and television. Yeah, I mean, there are exceptions, over the decades, like, obviously Singing in the Rain, West Side Story, Moulin Rouge, and La
Okay.
La Land, those sort of things. I've got a lot of time and appreciation for. However, I'm one that tends to feel that musicals for me work better on stage. They work better in the theatre
Mm,
because in the theatre you're already, just because of the environment and everything, you're already sort of suspending your disbelief, I think, more than you do with, or more than I certainly do with film and television. And I've always, suddenly sort of bursting into song and dance with backing music and everything is always kind of a bit jarring for me. I mean, like Moulin Rouge as an example, that's a surreal film anyway. That's not trying to be like realistic. So I think it kind of obviously works in that case. And then there's also there's movies that sort of fall into the musical category where it sort of works, things like, I guess, like The Bodyguard or A Star Is Born, where the music in that is either, at an event or a concert or in a recording studio or rehearsal space or something, so the numbers kind of work. But yeah, generally um musicals are quite far down in my tastes, although obviously, much like yourself, being somebody that's been educated in film and theatre, I obviously have a huge amount of respect and admiration for it as an art form, as a craft, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
Um, in terms of, my thing as a filmmaker and as an actor and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, I went to before film school, I studied photography and creative writing and some art classes and stuff. But then once I went through film school, the next thing for me was then to go to study acting, and I did everything I did. It was post grad courses and workshops and stuff. So I'm not a classically trained actor. Um, yes, I've worked in fringe theatre, and I've done, many short films and student films and everything before getting into the sort of independent features and web series and all of that. But um, I've never been into song or dance really. I didn't learn that. I'd like to have a go at everything, but I'm not particularly, I would say, talented or gifted in those areas. So for me, yeah, I know obviously a lot of actors that are classically trained have do song and dance as well, but it's not something that's personally been my sort of thing. I've been more from a sort of naturalistic type craft, and I feel like I've got us totally off subject. Yes, but yeah, so
No.
just broadly, sort of, and it is broadly. There are exceptions, of course, but yeah, just talking about musicals and certainly musical in film and television. Yeah, it's not one of my favorite things. In terms of television, I know that, again, there are shows like Glee and whatever that's all about sort of music, but I know obviously famously they did the Buffy episode as a musical, which I must admit I was in film school when that came out. I was, because I'm old. So I didn't actually see that, but I remember the hype around it. And my understanding of that was kind of, it came quite late in the Buffy seasons, so it was somewhat earned by that point. But yeah, maybe I'm sort of giving away my hand here a little bit. So Pete,
I think we've given away our hand a little bit.
I talk a lot, so yeah, please tell me, give me your thoughts, and I'll jump on my stuff.
I'm going to start with my minor nitpicks. First and foremost, there is no door to Pike's bedroom in his quarters, and that bugged the crap out of me. Because, yeah, it bugged the ever living crap out of me.
Actually, just a quick. Sorry, I'm going to derail you already, but just a quick thing on the quarters, and because I know it's something that we know from a production point of view why it is. They've got sets built for these things and stuff. But one thing I think is interesting with the whole quarters thing is they mention in this about having 200 crew members, which kind of lines up with the Cage, because I think in the original pilot of the Cage they have somewhere around 200. But obviously in the original series, the Kirk era, they always talk about 400 crew members. And I was thinking, in terms of your nitpick problem, there's the answer, right? It's the same Enterprise, but they decided, let's double the crew. So we're going to have to make all the crew quarters smaller to accommodate.
I mean, I don't want to get too nitpicky here, but no, I've got the original plans of the Enterprise, and ensigns were 4 to a room, right? With a shared bathroom in between two. So 8 people to a bath. So no. And also, did you notice the way that some of the shots were when they panned out of the ship, right? You're well, wait a second. You're saying that section of the ship, the saucer section, was one deck, and I was no, that doesn't make sense. Right?
No, you're right. Anyway, sorry, I derailed you already, and I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, it's just while you said that, I thought, by the way, so yeah,
it annoys me. But the other thing where I was what's going on here is that Una is running the transporter when Kirk comes aboard. And I was wait, what?
What happened to Kyle? What happened to Chief Kyle or whatever?
Also, just put that into any other Star Trek, right? Where it's something routine's happening in the transporter pad. Riker, can you beam them up? Right? What is going on? Why? That doesn't make any sense. Although maybe now that you say it, if the crew is in half, right? Maybe there are some positions missing. But I didn't like that. In terms of theme, before we get into the bigger nitpicks, have you ever read any Jasper Fforde? He's a author.
No, I feel like I should have, but no.
No, he's a comedic. I think is the right way to say it. I apologize if Mr. Fforde is listening. He is one of your countrymen, and he writes these novels that are set in an alternate reality that has. And I was thinking about him because there is this improbability field in some of his books, right? And so I was like, that idea is sort of coming straight out of his world, but in his world, like they really do improbable things, right? And so I don't know. I just felt like it was it was poorly done, And so now we'll get into my bigger complaint, which is that this was poorly done. It wasn't great. Like they took a big swing, and so credit for trying something different, credit for trying something new, but they didn't do it well. And I had an acting teacher one time in college that said, if you're gonna do something big, like you have to do it well. Otherwise, it's ridiculous and it's terrible. And so you can't take a big swing and half-ass it. And that's really, like I don't want to slam the actors here, right? But it's obvious that some of them are not singer dancer performers. Um, and that slightly gets in the way of this episode. Um,
Slightly.
Slightly. I think the bigger problem is
Hmm.
that none of the music is amazing.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that when we just listed those musicals that we know and love,
Hmm.
like we could start singing one of those songs right now, right? Because and even the first time you saw it, you came out and you knew part of the big number, right? Or part of one of the songs that really stuck with you. And right now, I can't tell you almost what any of the words were in some of these songs or
Hmm.
the feelings, like because they just didn't nail it. And I think that's down to writing, unfortunately,
Hmm.
again, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is
yeah.
which is a common theme for us, harping on the writing of this show. Um, and sort of new Star Trek in general,
Mm.
right? Like the
Oh,
production team
yeah.
is doing their thing, but I think they're really, maybe this goes back to why everybody's on strike right now, right? Is that they're not paying people enough, they're not putting enough writers in the room, and you're getting substandard material because I really feel like you can't do a musical episode if you're not spending like months and months, if not years and years, perfecting the music, And I was thinking about shows like Glee or Smash, right? Which were the two most recent musical TV shows I could think of. Um, and there, what they did was they didn't write new songs, you know? They just used previously written songs and adapted them.
Hmm.
And I kind of think this show might have been better if they did that.
Hmm.
Would have been more expensive, but it would
Yep.
have been better. Um, I like just a couple of I know I'm talking a lot, but
No, no,
a
no, no.
couple of things.
I can't say anything, Pete, because I'm always talking too much. So yes, you
Yeah,
carry on. I'm loving this.
I really had some deep feelings about this, right? Like I don't want to just toss it off as a garbage episode, right?
Mhm.
Because I think that does a disservice to a lot of stuff involved here, which is that, they tried, they didn't try hard enough. And so that's almost worse in my opinion, right? Like I would have preferred a boring half-assed episode
Mhm.
versus taking a swing and just missing
Yeah.
at something gigantic. On like "I'm So Lonely"
Mhm.
song, right? Uh, There, I just quoted the World Police movie, which is also a
Yeah.
musical, right? Like, and I've
Team
seen that
America.
Team
Team
America,
America.
World Police. I've seen that movie exactly once, but I remember Kim Jong Il singing a song called "I'm
Actually,
So Lonely."
there's also a song about you missed the mark, right? We could sing that. Oh dear. There you
But
go.
that just
We'll
proves my
waste it,
point,
Pete.
right? Like they
We'll waste
really,
it.
yeah, they wasted it. And so the on song, right? I was like, man, I was thinking about Hamilton, right? That like
Yeah.
there's a almost an exact same song in that. There's like a couple of them, And I was like, ooh, if they just sort of adapted that song for this, that would have been awesome, right? Instead, they gave us something that, I was like, okay, she's sad here. Like, there's sad songs in thousands of musicals. This one's doing nothing for me, right? Because guess what? Writing musicals is hard. And I think that that might also be part of the problem. When you pulled up the writers for this episode, and it's two writers who have been doing Star Trek. I was like, well, there's your big mistake, right?
Mhm.
Like, what they should have done was bring in a musical writers,
Yeah,
have Mark Shaman come in and write this.
yeah,
Right? Mark Shaman's the guy who wrote uh, the the Captain America musical for
that's
the
right. Which was, yeah,
Disney
which
stuff.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
which kind of in the context of where it was very amusing, wasn't it? That
yeah,
was, yeah,
but it was
yeah,
also like if you think about it, like when you're looking at that, I it worked as a musical, and
yes.
it was meant to be funny, it was meant to be ridiculous, but
But
it
also,
worked.
it still worked in a quote unquote realistic environment as well,
Yeah,
because it was a stage performed thing within the cinematic universe that they created. So yeah. But
yeah.
okay,
I also
sorry.
think they missed. No, and like they missed the mark on the Klingon should have been singing Klingon opera, right? Like
Yes, yes, that was
we
one of my
we
notes.
have that
Yes,
we have it established in
yeah,
world, right?
yeah,
That this is this, and you have already established that some people on this crew like Klingon
mm,
music,
yeah,
right? Uhura's been listening to,
yeah.
right?
Instead, they turn it into a boy band, and I tell you
Yeah,
what, I absolutely face palmed at that point. But yeah,
it. I didn't facepalm, but I was like, oh, that's the joke they went for, right? And I was like, well, you know what? That's a first draft joke, right? Like
yeah,
that's a joke where you're like, hey, we should do this because this would be silly, right? And it's like, should you though? Like, should you?
mm,
Because if instead you had them launch into
hmm,
like full Klingon opera,
hmm.
right? Like it would have been awesome.
Yeah. I was going to say it was
And
too clever for this.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay,
so or like what they talk about, like Klingon acid metal or something, right? Like there's so many different things you could have done
mm-hmm.
um, instead of doing that.
Mm,
And so my overall feeling is like utter disappointment. Not that they tried it, but that they didn't try it. They didn't do it well. They
yeah,
tried it without giving it the necessary time and money and effort that
hmm,
it needed. And I think that, it sort of goes back to sometimes we see them doing things where it's like it feels like somebody just said, "Oh, this would be neat if," and then they don't actually do the legwork to make it work.
yeah,
And that's what this felt like.
yeah. Now it's funny. I've for those who have been sort of following these episodes each week with us, it's fair to say that you and I, there's a lot we haven't agreed on this season. Okay, but pretty much where you're coming from on this is my thoughts entirely. So you know, to me, this whole episode felt so indulgent on behalf of the you know producers of the show. It reeked of you know something that clearly like Alex Kurtzman's been wanting to do for a while. But has it been earned? I don't think so. I know we're approaching 900 episodes of Star Trek in total now, which is staggering, and we haven't had a musical episode yet. But the plot around this musical episode was so thin that it was laughable. You know, the conceit about the subspace anomaly, the zipper, the fold in space, whatever. it was not well thought out enough, in my opinion, to have actually got away with making this plausible in any way. You know, I can't knock the actors and their performances, because no doubt they were having a blast. Many of them are musically trained anyway. Particular Celia Rose Gooding, who plays Uhura, Christina Chong, who plays Liane, and I think Rebecca. And I think Rebecca Romaine, even though she's obviously her past before becoming an actress was as a model, but apparently before that she did do musical theatre, and I think that's kind of apparent. And obviously the whole what is it, the Gilbert and Sullivan stuff was kind of added to the character, as that's kind of one of her sort of favorite musical influences and whatever. But so yeah, I mean, there's that. But I don't know, it as I said, it felt really indulgent, and kind of I mean, I've not, again, we tried to get this out more prompt this week, and I've purposely not read, listened, or watched any reviews on this yet. I find most of the time that I do, a lot of the reviewers out there completely disagree with any thought. Well, not that they're disagreeing with me, because they probably haven't heard this show, but their thoughts are very different to mine, and I can imagine this being absolutely gushed about by some of the Star Trek fans out there. But I think it's going to be divisive. To sort of start, because there's a lot to unpack here. This is why I thought we'd probably go longer, because we've both got a lot of feelings and thoughts on this. One of the things I will say that they're doing this season, which is I kind of don't like, is, for my liking, there's too much Kirk in this. All right, so this is now the 4th time we've had Kirk feature in Strange New Worlds. Obviously, it's only the 2nd time in canon, because the first 2 times were alternate realities and time travel and all that stuff. In this one, him even being on the Enterprise was a bit thin. I thought this whole kind of shadowing, and I was like, really? Would he not just shadow? What about shadowing his own captain on the Farragut or whatever? If he's going to be the first officer, and so I thought that was super thin, as well as the whole kind of conceit and idea behind it. But what I guess what disappoints me about this whole thing is, this is the kind of thing that I don't even want in my head canon, because it was so absurd and so poor, and so I found it cringe. It was cringe-worthy for me, right? That I would almost like to say, oh, it didn't happen. But the trouble is that the interpersonal character stuff that happened in this episode is actually really important to the development and the furtherment of the characters. So you can't even say, well, it didn't exist, because obviously we've got the whole sort of Kurt Liane stuff, we've got the Spock Chapel stuff, there's a lot. We've got the Pike and Patel stuff. So there's a lot going on here. And the other thing I kind of was disappointed with is, I kind of hoped that at the end of it would be, once they sort of set the world back to, or the universe back to normal, it would be something that none of them would remember. I was hoping it was one of those kind of Yesterday's Enterprise type things, where it puts everything back to how it should be, and they have no knowledge of it. But they do. And again, I sort of have problems with the fact that Kirk says in the original series about him meeting Pike when he got made, fleet captain or something. But you think he might mention, and we burst into song at one point as an ensemble on the bridge.
Not to derail too much, right? But like that was one moment where, just to put it into context, right? They're in the big closing final number. Everyone has to get together and sing in order for them to, sing the ripple to death. And I was just like, imagine like there's 200 people on the ship and 5 of them know who this guy is, right? And then all of a sudden he takes center stage to sing a line about why he's there. And all I could imagine was like, if I could imagine the reality where, they're singing, Kirk jumps in to sing his one line, and then 50 people fall out, and they're like, who was that? Right? Like, why is this guy singing? He's not part of our crew. Where did he come from? Right? Like, and like, I just would have loved if at that moment we saw the bar go down. It's like, oh no, we're losing it because we let Kirk sing. Right? But like, again, like that would take too much effort, I guess.
I mean, yes, this season has been about trying other things with the episodic format. And on one hand, I kind of applaud them for doing that. But on the other hand, what that's meant is, because we're talking about a 10-episode season, this has been all over the shop. I mean, it's been all over the place, especially as you're trying to have story and character threads that go through the whole thing. So it ends up becoming more nonsense than anything. And when you think that this is the penultimate episode of this season, I mean, in the normal days, this wouldn't even be the halfway mark. Yeah, so you might, but I mean, even the early seasons of Discovery, I think, were like 17 episodes or something like that per season, right? But
they were 12, were they?
Oh, whatever. But they were more than this. That's my point being. And I just think, they've, again, from the showrunner's point of view, you're trying to be experimental and forward thinking and trying to do new stuff, and I get that, but it just, it's all over the place, I feel like. And what staggered me here is, I didn't know, I'd heard a rumor a long time ago that Kurtzman said he'd wanted to do a musical episode, and I assumed that would be in Discovery for obvious reasons, although obviously that followed a more serialized format. But what I find amazing is 2 episodes ago we had the crossover with Lower Decks. Please check out our episode on that. And that was the one that I thought I was going to have the most problems with and really hate and all of this sort of thing. And I was, pleasantly surprised by it, right? But then we had a very dark episode last week, which delved into not only the backstory of some of the other characters, but also opened up some real sort of moral and ethical dilemmas and questions, right? And then we jump to this nonsense. And it's just, I was just like, oh my God. So yeah, I can't say it was badly made or badly performed, but like you've said, again, it's about the writing and the overall direction that this show has been taken in. And I just feel it's been a really inconsistent mess, and the writing in some cases thinks it's far more clever than it actually is.
Oh, that's a great way to say it. Great way to say it. It thinks it's cleverer than it is.
I mean, this was quite up its arse. When I say it was indulgent, it had it almost kind of, it wound me up a little bit. I got to be honest. And then the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say, was the Klingon stuff. I agree with you. If they had done something, if they had proved that they understood the Klingon characters and the Klingon culture, and done the whole bursting into some Klingon opera, which I believe already exists as well, from other things, then that would have been quite a clever take, I think. But turning it, great as it was to have Bruce Horrick in there or whatever as the commander, but turning it into a dancing Klingon boy band thing was just, it was so cringe. I just so no, I didn't need this. This is not what I like out of Star Trek. I've got to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think like they didn't play with things the way that the way that I think might have been better, like by having Mbenga sing and then him saying, "I don't sing," right? It's like, okay, that's very like basic tropes, right? And like, instead, like if they had like, I would have given this episode so much more credit if they had somebody sing who was really bad at it, right? And it was awful singing, right? And then that was part of the problem, was that like, oh no, they're bad at this, right? And so when they have to sing, it sounds terrible. And like, what if that was part of the thing they had to overcome for the finale, right? Is like finding a way to, right?
I mean, the solution to their problem of the week, was, I mean, it was so half-assed, wasn't it? It made no sense at all. I mean, and even the being aware of it, saying, why are we singing and how do we know the words? And they had that thing where Ortegas and forgotten the name of the navigator. It will come to me, but Mitchell, Ortegas and Mitchell doing the pressing the buttons and stuff at the same time and all of that. So I know they showed the awareness of it, but I just don't think it worked. It was a big swing, but
they missed.
I think so. I really do.
No, I think so too.
I found it more cringe than entertaining. But as I said, my disappointment with it is I would like to just write it off completely. But then again, too much character stuff actually happens in this, which interestingly, most of that wasn't sung. I know they sung about their feelings and stuff relating to it, but the actual interpersonal stuff, a lot of that was in scenes that weren't sang. The Kirk and Leanne scene, even the Pike and Batel scene towards the end, and all of that stuff. I mean, those, yes, they had their private conversation thing on the bridge, but I just don't know. Kirk, as I said, Kirk should not have been in this. It was just a way to shoehorn poor Wesley, who's probably contracted to do X number of episodes or something. But it was shoehorning him into the proceedings, and I don't know. I mean, there's probably other things that I've had a lot of. I mean, one thing I will say is it's provoked a lot of, probably too much headspace for me thinking about this when I've got way more important things to think about in life, really. But it definitely made me think, but it more annoyed me than anything. So
I'm almost the opposite. I like this. This is not making me think. This is not making me want to be with it. I half paid attention to the episode, right? And like, and I have no desire to go back and catch up on it, right? Because it was unengaging and poorly done, in my opinion, right? And so I kind of like, I contrast that with last week's episode where it it annoyed me as well, right? And some of the stuff that happened annoyed me, but it annoyed me in a way that like I was thinking about it and I was engaged with it, and I, the dilemmas of the characters and them dealing with their war trauma has been sticking with me. Whereas this episode, you know, it's not going to stick with me.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
just going to go away.
I don't think I can bear watching it again. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I just don't, and I'm pleased that the actual production itself had such a good time, making this and stuff. But the in-universe stuff, like when they finished the ensemble at the end, it breaking into the Alexander Courage Star Trek theme from the 60s was kind of like that. That didn't, I mean, not that any of this felt like it should have been there or in place, but that really did feel out of place. I was like, what the hell are they doing there? That almost felt like a bit of fan service for fan service sake. Yeah. And it just felt horrible. I'd have preferred, it's quite funny as well. So let's talk about the opening credits where they did the sort of a cappella version of the excellent Jeff Russo theme for this show. But I was actually wondering whether part way through the mission log, whether he was going to, burst into song, to boldly go, whatever, yeah, I don't know. As I said, I used the term indulgent. It felt like a real indulgence on behalf of the production to me, rather than it didn't feel like an earned contribution to the canon, if that makes sense. It feels, I don't know, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to disagree. In fact, if you're watching or listening to this and you do disagree, give us some comments. More than happy to hear other points of view. Not saying
infinite diversity and infinite combinations, right? There's a Star Trek out there.
We had that. We certainly
for
had
everyone.
That. Yeah. It's funny. I thought. I mean, we are approaching the hour, but I don't know why. I thought we'd be talking for longer on this, but.
Honestly, I thought we'd be done in 20 minutes because I thought we were both just going to be like, it's garbage. What's the point? Goodbye. Thanks.
So have you got anything? I mean, I probably think of something by the time we've ended this, but at the moment, I think I've kind of got it all. I'm just trying to think if there was any other plot points or, what thin plot there was, but any other character points that needed mentioning.
Yeah, I got all my notes in.
I wasn't, no pun intended, but fully engaged. So,
well done.
All right. Well, then, if you've got nothing to add, that brings us to this part of the show, which is our rank stripe rating. For those of you, if you're listening on the podcast, that goes from no stripes, which is an ensign, up to 2.5 stripes, which is captain. So, and everything in between. So, Pete, where are you? Where are you placing this week's episode?
I would like to say that I have been in the top half of the ranking system for every other episode, I think, right, so far. And I am struggling now with not giving this one an ensign. Like, I really feel like it's an ensign. I want to think of something that would elevate this to a lieutenant junior grade, but I just it's just the bottom of the barrel for me. Yeah, this is an ensign.
Yeah, well, I mean, much as for the effort, I'd like to give it a a hatched stripe as a lieutenant junior grade or whatever. I can't bring myself to do it. This for me, like you use the term bottom of the barrel. Ensign for me as well as a Star Trek episode. I would only give it a more than that if I was talking about it as a, piece of production. But yeah, it's an ensign, and it's weird because this is not I didn't know we were going to get this episode, but I thought I would be giving another episode an ensign, which I ended up ranking much higher. So
right there with you. And I feel like that's also part of the conversation, though, right? Like that in this season, they've tried some things. They had the animated crossover. They got this, right? The animated crossover, they did really well and it worked. This, they tried it and it did not go well.
No, ill-conceived. It just wasn't developed enough. It wasn't developed enough to be satisfactory, regardless of the actual shooting and the performances of it. Because I know they did it obviously while they were still in COVID restrictions and all of that stuff. But yeah, it wasn't well thought out enough, I don't think. And this thing about trying all these different things, again, I'll reiterate what I said last week. If we had 25 episodes in a season, I'd say, yeah, go, shoot from all the different corners, right? But
yeah,
when you've got 10 episode seasons, and lots of character arcs and obviously places where we, the problems with a prequel, places where we know this has got to end up and stuff, I think they've been throwing it out there in too many different directions this season. And whereas the first season, again, even talking about musical, right, in the first season, they had that episode when Uhura and Spock had to sing at that anomaly on different harmonics. Yeah. But that wasn't jarring. That made that made total sense to the story and the environment and the situation, right? So I applaud that in season 1. That didn't bother me at all. But this, oh man, I don't know. Yeah, I know it's supposed to just be taken as a bit of fun and not too seriously and all of this, but when you compare it to the tonal shift from last week, it's just jarring. And yeah, and yes, there were Easter eggs in there and stuff, but oh man,
they've done bits of fun in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, right? They've had fun episodes, quirky moments, right? And it's been done, to varying degrees of success. But this, I think we just need to, the purpose here is us giving our feedback, right? And how we feel about it. And so it's okay for us to say, this missed the mark entirely for us.
Yeah. I hope the season finale is great because, season 2 for me has been generally quite underwhelming this season. And
yeah, I mean,
compared to season 1, which
I'm coming at it from the exact opposite, right? Season 1 was a little underwhelming for me.
Wow.
And, I remember season 1 getting mad during a lot of episodes, right? Because I just feel like they weren't doing it well. And the front half of season 2 has been fantastic for me and just, real successes. And now the back half of season 2 is not doing well for me. Yeah. I really think you're going to rewatch that time travel episode and come around to it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's that wasn't bad. I mean, that was compared to this.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Honestly. And as I said, the only episode of this entire season that I've watched more than once was the crossover. Those old
Lower Decks.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, again, I know we've already talked at length at tedium about that, but I do think, I keep having thoughts, and I think so much of the success of that is down to Jonathan Frakes as a director. because, you know, he has been involved in so much Star Trek over the years, and has a real sort of love for what he's doing. And yeah, anyway, sorry,
but that ties in here, right? Like
premium.
that episode was successful because they had somebody who was an expert in that subject, right? Now it just so happens the subject was Star Trek, but for this, what they needed was an expert in musicals.
Perfect.
To write it and to direct it, and I don't think that's what they had.
Yeah. I mean, the suggestion you made about the you know, the guy who wrote the Marvel music was a good idea. Yeah. But, oh dearie dear. Okay, so are you happy that you've vented enough about this? Yeah.
Happy is a difficult word to use for our discussion here, but yeah, sure.
Cool. All right, well, let's open a channel.
If you are watching this stream on YouTube, please do check out the podcast version. And if you can listen to it on your commute if you zoned out at any moment while watching the YouTube section and get all the goodness. We're Let's See What's Out There podcast on all good podcasting apps, at LSWOT cast on social medias, and let us know what you think. LSWOTcast@gmail.com. I've been Pete Mealy. You can find me at PMCMELE. Keith, where can people find more of you and your work?
Yeah, well, if you're here on the YouTube channel, please check out more of the work on that. As I said, we cover some of the physical home media releases of Star Trek as well as many other films and TV shows. Also, if you want to see more of my creative stuff, please do go over to my other channel, which is British Isles. That's EYLES, as in my last name. And I've got some short films that I've made there. Always interested to have any comments or feedback on that. Most of those films were my composer collaborator was Neil Myers, who also did the theme music for this show. So Neil's excellent work can be found at neilmyersmusic.com. So that just leaves me to say thank you, Pete, as always, for delving into these deep dive discussions with me.
Keith, thank you.
We'll be ready next week for the finale, which I'm just crossing my fingers for the finale. I want it. The thing is, I so want stuff to be good. I'm not one of those people that enjoys criticizing or complaining about stuff, because that's not really where I'm coming from or where I want this show to come from. But objectively, I found that hard to enjoy this week. But anyway, we'll catch you next time on
Let's See What's Out There.
Bye for now.
Bye.